It's 12:15. Call the meeting to order.
Good afternoon. The time is
Working out.
12:15, January 23rd, 2025, here at the city, Laredo City Hall, first floor conference room. I'm going to order the City of Laredo Economic Development Committee meeting. And we call roll
René González,
Here.
Arturo Domínguez,
here,
Mayra Hernández, present. César Garay,
present.
Omar Minja, Raúl Alexander, Fernando Baldazo,
Present.
Julia Radnowski,
Present.
Mr. Chairman, we have
Let the record show that the quorum of the committee members is present, that this meeting is duly called, and that the notice of the meeting was posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. Next item, citizens' comments.
and we don't have any.
Very good. Approval of the minutes. Or to approve?
Second.
No. I need
Motion to approve minutes from last meeting.
Mr. Randazzo motion,
Second.
second by Mr. Garay. Any comments? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
carries. Moving on, action items, discussion with possible actions to recommend an incentive program to attract grocery store in District 7 and any other matters incident thereto. I brought this item. We need an HEB, mine broke. What do we need to do? No, an HEB, algo grande, no tan chiquito, something bigger than,
Have you talked to HEB? How come they don't want to be there or they haven't been there?
well, I don't know, this is a discussion. If you all wanna,
Well,
No, but
does the city conduct any studies to assess if there is a need and then through economic, so support, do we go to these agencies to say, hey, we have done the studies, it looks like it would be feasible, would you want to come invest in these areas? I don't know, just.
I think, allow to talk, any business person, especially HEB, I think they just voted number one, or they're just the number one supermarket in the USA. They will be more efficient than the city, and I'm sure they have done studies. So I think the first step will be to approach HEB or Walmart and see, are you interested in moving over here? And they will tell you, yes, because X, Y, and Z, or no, because we have seen the market and there's, a bunch of mom and pop stores that we want to ruin, like Plancherito and all these other stores. And maybe that's the reason they have not. So the first step will be to talk to them to see if they're interested in opening in the area.
If I may think, Mr. Chairman, it has both components, this particular item, because I do think that, we don't have an economic development strategy per se for the city. There is a master plan, but I think this committee can definitely recommend considering the development of an economic development study that can address and give us the figures that are going to help us attract and convince this type of investments and projects that we're looking at. I will tell you that one of the exercises that we're working on in the department is reevaluating a similar incentive program of the traffic division, but it has other parts that can be, maybe considered for that particular area. Yeah, the NEC program and guidelines. Our intention is that we can really evaluate the different districts in Southern and how we can possibly consider, and we will bring some of the recommendations to this advisory committee and recommend the guidelines that may be applied based on the areas that we want to establish in the state. So that's something that we can take into account.
and based on El Rancherito and then San Agustin and all the different neighborhoods. And yes, I understand the Rancherito's there, but then again, but you have the other markets as well. One on Shiloh, which is close to Variety, and they still exist. Julian.
I really like this item. I think it's a good item. Can I make a suggestion? Isn't there a definition and a particular way of doing a study to find out what areas of Laredo have food deserts?
Oh,
And
yeah. We
The
don't have,
reason I ask that is food deserts, just because you have convenience stores in the area, that doesn't alleviate or count as, oh, that area has food. It truly studies like, does it have fresh produce, all these other things. And then if we do a comprehensive study, then we can have an understanding of all the districts and what specific areas have food deserts, and then maybe develop an incentive policy to bring about not just, for example, an HEB, because there are smaller concepts. I know Walmart now does neighborhood centers. HEB themselves now has neighborhood centers too, to fit those possible projects into the area. Because I do know HEB and Walmart compete heavily to the point where one will choose to enter an area, in the short term, potentially as a loss, knowing that the demand's going to increase. So having a policy that kind of it almost does the grunt work for not just HEB and Walmart, but any other entry that wants to enter Laredo on figuring out, hey, where should I go if there's a need for food?
And that's pretty much my recommendation when I mentioned an economic development strategy. And I absolutely, Julian, yes, food deserts and some other reports and the numbers that we've gathered. Yeah, it's not just if there's already a meat market nearby that completely, accounts for, already an area that is being served. Those reports take a lot of other issues into account. They take the median age in the neighborhood, because obviously kids have more needs and they also take into account the schools in the surrounding areas that are already providing, some sort of so yes, there's many different components that take place when they evaluate these areas. But to Julian's point, that's what will, economic development strategy and study will give us, and in other areas as well, not only in food deserts, but in areas of retail and industrial and whatnot. But short-term plan, the evaluation of some of the guidelines and policies that we can possibly consider to start attracting this type of projects in the area.
Madam.
Oh, actually, that's what I was gonna bring up, the food desert analytics that we have through the Laredo Center for Urban and Agricultural Studies. That's a goal of the program, is to analyze areas in our community that are considered food deserts. Downtown is considered a food desert, and so not having all of this. But I think to Julian's point is, yeah, besides one of the other concepts that I think we need to look for is also clean eating. And so besides Walmart and HEB, you have stores like Aldi, and I don't think those are stores that are considered in this area. And their focus is on clean product. We have a high diabetic community, and so we want to make sure that we also are cognizant of the fact that we're bringing institutions or organizations that are going to be good for our own community members. So again, and it's at a very fraction of the cost. So you may find, organic tomatoes for 10 cents, which is cheaper or more economic for our community versus going to maybe other convenience stores that we set up for 25 cents, and it's organic. Again, just a thought that, again, we reciprocate. So now when it's not only food desert spaces that we're looking at, we're also looking at the fact that our community's health is also being taken into consideration, and then obviously our economic opportunity for the reality of the community, who the workforce is and what they bring back to the table. So I think looking at all those branches will help us establish good opportunities in districts that we have food desert going on.
Let's assume that Walmart or big chain store is interested in moving to the mines area, so we can get with the item, not lose focus on the item. Let's assume that they're interested. Let's assume that it's not gonna affect the mom and pop stores in the area. One way to incentivize right now, I know there's a new development, a new subdivision, Palmview, I think is the name. And it's on prime real estate, North Park of Mines area before you get to Loop 20. Right now would be the time when you can work out with the developer of Palmview, whoever that is, and try to get an area designated for that type of business, zone it M1 or M2 or B3, whatever it has to be zoned. So it's ready to do the work before, and then move to incentivize maybe the developer where you give them certain credit for, have to donate certain area for parks and stuff like that. Work something out with them where that land can be partly donated or something, or, incentivize it. But right now, before anything's developed, right now, when they're just zoning it, they can zone it that way. And that's like a prime area for a supermarket, because it's right in front of all the subdivisions. And there's another subdivision coming in back of it, so the supermarket will be exactly in the middle. And we'll have access on 6-lane Mine Road and 6 lanes or 8 lanes on Route 20, no, even more, because there's 4, and 2 and 2. So that's like 12 lanes, 12 lanes and 8 lanes. So it will be prime location.
My last
Mr.
question.
Baldassar's really right on this. He's right on the money because we end up setting ourselves up for food deserts when we are approving these master plans for these neighborhoods, and we're not taking into account, retail and commercial, and making sure that that is also in the plan, because if there's no opportunity to put one of these grocery chains in these developments, we are ourselves creating the food desert because there's no opportunity for them.
No other chain store is gonna move further than Loop 20. And this is in between Loop 20 and 35, that's prime location. I mean, not right now, maybe in 10 years.
My only question for this study, and then do we need to hire somebody? Do we have to recommend to hire somebody for the council? And the Tammy, you do this study? I mean, what's the approach?
Some conversations have already been held with private entities, because that's gonna be key, partnering with some of the private sector organizations. So we just had a conversation earlier this week. So that is developing on how the process and the, improvement and the funding for the study, will look like. So this allows, some time to come back with more solid, I guess, updates on this possibility.
Very good. Any other discussion? Greg? I'm gonna check on Cool.
Let me check on it moving forward. Oh, really? Okay. Actually, when I talked about this item with my sister, she said, hopefully let me check on moves in the area. So I have good news for her.
They're opening in
We'll
multiple
move to the
areas.
next item, discussion with possible action on developing a partnership program with academic alignment with the workforce needed of the city and any other matters incidents there too. And this is, again, going back to money investing in education for the city, for the students, for the city to get a higher education and
Mr. Chairman,
bringing more money to the city and getting better paid.
at the present time, I know that Laredo College is working very closely with the City of Laredo and the aircraft, and it's been working very well to getting students back to, but as you said, they're getting ready to cut it off, so we need to go back, and I know the Chamber of Commerce is looking at this to Washington coming up, and the city's also gonna be going in March. And that might be something to discuss, the success of these programs and the partnership with both the university and the college.
We were just at the opening legislative session last week, and so one of the conversations, which again, interesting, is the fact that you have some of our state representatives are not coordinating some of the bills they're passing, with the fact that workforce and education are go hand in hand. And so it was interesting to see that, because the city's going independent, the college and the university is going independent. The workforce is, or the public, private sector going independent, and it doesn't seem, it may, but it may not seem that we are all talking the same language, the same needs. And so for me, it was interesting to see, I was with a representative, they were passing a bill on transportation. Because I'm in the commission, I know what is information, because at the university, our hope is to open the logistic project or program. And then I know that our community college also has another project that they're executing. if we would not have been there to have those conversations as members of city governance and in its committees, I think missed opportunities would have happened. Now it's a matter of pushing them, and then I understand you all will be up in legislation February or something like that. That's what I was told, and so, again, for me, it's interesting to see that we all have the same interest in this Laredo community, but yet we still do not talk about centralizing our needs to move forward. And then obviously the concept of playing the ball, the play with our politics at the end of the day.
My question was, after they finish school, who does the follow-up? Did you get a job? If it's the, for example, the CDL people, and you call them up and they say, no, I got my CDL, but I don't have a job. You got contact letter of motor carriers, they'll help you out with a job. And so they have a bunch of members that they can, that side or the workforce, but then again.
We have
We
something.
have surveys that we have to comply with, the universities and colleges do have surveys that we can comply to do a follow-up. The reality is it's complex because people leave maybe the community. And as a matter of fact, we were having that conversation yesterday. Many of our talent don't stay, we don't retain talent a lot of the time because the upward mobility opportunity is limited in our city. Because we're only focused on one or two or three professions. And so either you're in CJ, which is criminal justice, you're law enforcement, you're in education, or you're in logistics. So if you have other professions, it's complex to stay here. If you have arts and design or AI design, we don't have the workforce here in our area to be able to sustain something of that magnitude. They would have to leave, for example, to us, and they're going to get 80,000 a year starting off. We don't even have people that have master's degree that could make that amount of money in their first few years. We even already could. And so it's complicated. So we need to, if we want to diversify our portfolio, then we need to start bringing Fortune 500. I'm just giving you an example.
And also what comes first, right? Because a lot of times there's an argument to be said as well about companies not looking at Laredo because the workforce, it's not there. So I think it has to be a balance in that.
Like, for example, if you would go to my association, which is the trade, but you would think, with logistics, what we need right now is cybersecurity. We would like to hire people that have that type of, at least a certification to do something with the system. And so we would tell the city, well, if you're gonna give money, be sure that you add cybersecurity to the certifications. And so I think the approach also is to get closer to the business that we have here and try to find out what they really need. Do they need X-ray assistance? What exactly do they need?
And there is an initiative that will be soon, will be launched pretty soon, I hope. And again, this is a public-private initiative to where we really wanna form some sort of an alliance, a group that combines all three areas, government, public sector, private sector, and academia, so that we can start holding those initial conversations, What is it that we can work together and the role of each one of our entities in bringing, putting together some sort of a program. And I'm just throwing examples right here, like Laredo College, whenever we have the Laredo Cares program with them, they're very prompt and very fast at creating a la carte certifications, case in point, hospitality, we're seeing some restaurants and hotels, opening up. We sit down with them, we tell them, can we, and this is fast track certifications, right?
Yeah.
So, and so right now they're working on putting together a certification in that area, industry that we see, we need to provide. Point in case, it's just, I think, identifying the roles of each one of our organizations and entities. There is an initiative that will be soon, and it's already being put together by the private sector. And I really hope that as phase 2 of those initial brainstorming sessions, that's when we'll bring in, industry leaders, because we need to learn from you as well. Like the cybersecurity needs, you would think that the transportation industry is all for just transportation and warehousing. what other areas and in workforce development can we grow and expand that are still related to our main industry, so.
And then the AI also is getting very popular as well, but who needs it locally? You know, yeah, it's what is the community, and that's what we. that's
Or
the
just
city
we
has to admit.
create
Or
the
create
market
as well.
for it,
Yes.
Is there the opportunity?
But anyhow, on this item, there is something that is being considered at the city and at some conversations that are, with upper management and with some of the departments. This has been brought up as well. There's, interest from city managers' office in identifying this model as well. So I think this year for this particular committee, this can be one of those initiatives that we can look at and move forward.
And in our case, we can invite our provost or our assessment team within the academia sector, because we just met yesterday about this, so we are going to be launching out something pretty soon that talks about this type of initiative within communities. You see it in other cities, for example, in Mexico, Michigan, they do that. There's a partnership with their cities where they do internal internships, and they spend a good amount of money on internship opportunities, but it needs to cost reciprocity, so that's where your private sector comes in. They have a really good system going on, and I think they just launched it in San Antonio.
And now that you mentioned that,
Monterrey has it actually.
Querétaro has a very strong work plan that involves all three levels of, private, public, and academia. And that's precisely the model, it's a partnership, it's a bilateral support and collaboration. There's opportunities, in aerospace, they're very big in industrial and manufacturing and transportation as well. So kind of like that same model that other countries, use on bilateral collaborations. That's pretty much what we want to start looking into as well, combined with a local, effort by entities at the level. They're very heavy, and I know this has been mentioned at this committee in the past. They have very delineated clusters that have also, in my opinion, have a very impactful results on some of the initiatives that
And the city was at Querétaro very recently.
the state, most of the support is at the state level.
But I mean, the city let it was and get it.
Yes, we were there last week, and some of the conversations across the different entities that we visited with in the government area. They're very proud of that model that they've had, and it's been very successful for them. They get a lot of support at different levels from the federal, from the state.
And if I recall correctly, it's really a model that came from a US university concept at another state. And the person that graduated from this particular university adopted that concept going back home. They were setting up abroad, going back to their community country and implemented now that they're in government. So again, it all started at the university. That idea.
And we have participation with Camilo and Radio College at this moment.
So it was really nice to see that. Now we have to plan it and develop it and implement it and see.
I think regardless if we get Karen or not, I think the city
Yeah.
should still always invest in education. That's my 2 cents. Agree for the discussion going forward, discussion with possible action regarding the downtown vacant building ordinance.
This item was brought up by.
Can somebody make the ordinance?
Yeah. That was put up by me. I'm gonna show a letter that was sent to property owners. Let me share my
Let's
screen.
find out about the ordinance first, educate ourselves, familiarize with the ordinance.
I can speak broadly about the ordinance
Okay.
and its history,
It's
but
20
I'm not sure if staff would like to do so.
This is 20 pages.
Not quite.
Oh,
So back in, just a very brief recap. Back in 2021, City Council adopted an ordinance to pretty much, request vacant property owners in the downtown area to register their property as a way to, one, have a database of all those vacant buildings, see what programs may need to be, looked at to attack that issue. Now, this is the information that I have. This was, like, again, 3-4 years ago. The ordinance didn't go into effect. It was supposed to go into effect in 2023 for year one to allow property owners to register their vacant building at no, with no fees involved. For some reason, the ordinance wasn't, it was adopted, the program wasn't implemented, many different, changes and whatnot, internal or administrative, I should say. Now it is being, it was starting 2025, that's what was, I guess, activated and launched. 2025 as year one for property owners to register their empty vacant building at no cost. It's just a free, I guess, registry. However, year 2, 3, and 4, there are fees that are gonna be implemented moving forward.
And what's the benefit of registering your empty property?
When the ordinance, and I wasn't part of those exercises when this was put together, but the way the ordinance is read and some of the items, it's to pretty much, one, encourage property owners to, I guess, because the ordinance, and I won't go very much into detail and the technicalities, but the application requests a lot of information, like what are your plans on revitalizing? How are you promoting it? Do you have a possible lease coming up, in the near future, just to
So it's more
have
of
an
a
idea. It's a registration.
But
It's an official, I guess.
me as a property owner, how do I benefit from it? What benefit do I get? It seems like I will only be punished without any benefit. And everybody, if I have a investment property, when it's not rented, I'm already being punished. I'm not renting it, I'm only paying right now, like property taxes for it, and it's empty.
And
That's
it is my,
punishment enough.
it is my
It's right here. Just pay them today.
It is my understanding that this particular ordinance, there were several, even property owners involved as they were, I guess, putting together this ordinance and program. I wouldn't be able to, what I can tell you is that at least for the.
May I give some context at that
Yes.
point? Because you're mentioning when this was put together, I was there.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Julian.
The floor is
Educate
yours.
us.
So the history of this ordinance and how it came about was to develop a registry of property so we can understand the true vacancy of the downtown. That point alone is why this was created, was to have property owners basically come out and say, hey, my building's empty. It's not. It was an easy way to get all that information because with that information, we can do a lot of things. One, we can go out for grants because we understand the true vacancy. Just to put it into perspective, at the time, the Webb County Appraisal District had the vacancy of the downtown at, I think, at 20%, which if you walked around the downtown, you knew that wasn't really the case. So the goal of the vacant building ordinance at the time was to develop a registry. And the idea behind it is if you self-reported, and the city doesn't have to go out there and do the study, then you don't have to pay a fee. But if you don't self-report within the first year, since the city has to go there and figure it out themselves, they're going to charge a fee to go do that. That was the idea of this whole program. What you see here today and what was passed was not what was told to us as property owners that it was going to be. So just to give some background also, at the time, the city, after the discussions of this, the city hired Main Street to actually go and do a vacancy study, which was actually the whole thing we were trying to achieve. So they hired Main Street, they paid them, and they did the vacancy study on behalf of them. So this wasn't really needed. These conversations started in 2021. I guess the city passed it. I think everyone's point, and I was seeing everyone's expressions on how it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. We are penalizing property owners that are trying to lease buildings for trying to lease buildings. It's as simple as that. And then those funds that are now being penalized to those property owners that are struggling to lease buildings are then going into the general fund. Another thing that was discussed at the time was if this were to be created, that if there were fees, the fees would have to go into some downtown organization or some fund. At the time, what was being discussed was the TERS, that the fee should go into the TERS. I'm really stupefied at what we see today. It's a little infuriating. It's very infuriating. I sit on the business improvement district, and the amount of calls that I got on this was astonishing, and the anger behind it all was not surprising to me, because this letter that went out, let me share this, is basically written out about how this is all about economic development, and this is so the city can help these property owners, but this entire ordinance doesn't have one thing in it that helps property owners, not one. And on top of that, in the ordinance, once you read through it, it does state that if you give a plan of how you're working to solve this problem of leasing your building, then the fee will be waived. But in the ordinance, it also states that if the city doesn't respond within 30 days to what you are claiming is the reason you can't lease it, so the fees will be waived, then the fees won't be waived. So if the city doesn't properly staff the building services department to actually respond to people, which we all know people are going to be submitting letters left and right, and they don't have time to respond to those, then by de facto, they have to pay the fees.
So, yeah, I completely understand, and I got that impression from the second sentence that Miriam told us. Investors downtown are not getting any benefit, and they're just being punished. So your suggestion is to just go ahead and cancel this, right?
Well,
What
so
would be the ideal solution? What's the ideal solution?
let me give you the ideal solution, because I've already been meeting with many individuals regarding this. I think the original intent of this policy should still be fulfilled. So, and what I mean by that is this. When this was created, it was to collect the data on vacancy rates. And if people self-reported, then we can see year after year, hey, are vacancies improving or are they getting worse? That data is really important, because, and the value of that Main Street study is Webb County was saying we were at 20% vacancy. The Main Street study found out that we were over 40% vacancy in our downtown. And just to have an understanding, what is considered a real estate depression is a vacancy rate below 20%, and we're double that. So I think what we should be moving on as a committee is to recommend that we go back to the original intent, which is, you know, if you are self-reporting, there's no fees, no matter how long it takes. You know, and so that year after year, we can constantly see, hey, you know, we're going to move on some economic policy for the downtown. Right now, the business improvement district is looking to provide services. There's all these things. TERS is providing improvements. The data of understanding the vacancy rate and how it fluctuates is really important to see if we're having an economic impact. So as easy as it is for me to say, just this needs to be removed, I think we need to go back to the original intent, which is the self-reporting side. And if you're self-reporting, there's just no fees.
I think there should be an incentive to self-report instead of fees for not reporting. And if you don't want to report, then you're not going to get help. That's it. That's punishment enough. And if you report it, let's incentivize it. You know, it should be the other way.
We have reviewed this ordinance, and I know we have our legal team here as well. And if I'm not mistaken, one of the conversations has been, you know, ordinances can be amended, and if there's an advice, you know, advisement from this committee.
So that was, I actually wrote that in my notes. So I wanted one, recommend to amend, or second, how do we retire ordinances? Because I know that when they started talking about the year, I'm like, I think that was a year that everybody wanted to pass everything through ordinances without even checking if there was already an ordinance that needed to be amended. So that's one. And two, if the goal has already been met by partnering with a nonprofit institution, then my next question to the landowners or the property owners is, are you all going to the appraisal district and showing this documentation as property owners so that they do their job of reappraising those properties? I used to be an appraiser many months ago, so you can do that. And then obviously you have the elected officials that are appointed to the appeals committee, so that's another option. But my thing is, yeah, this ordinance, as more and more I hear about it, yeah, this ordinance doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Not for upward mobility or economic improvement, so I want to know, and I ask people, how can we either one amend, what's that procedure like, or retire if we need to do that?
You have 10 minutes,
Yes,
just as a,
it's this simple because it's exactly the same process. If you're gonna repeal an ordinance or you're gonna amend an ordinance, it requires a new ordinance. So it's 2 readings. So the process is the same. So,
Make a recommendation to city council to repeal the ordinance, they read it twice and that's it.
yeah, if they,
but I think that
but the ordinance is a new ordinance, so it's an ordinance to repeal this ordinance. So it creates a new ordinance that repeals the.
So if we amend it with no.
But before you do that, I just want to say that the fees, whatever fees are collected should go to the TERS.
There should not be any.
That can be.
There should not, why would you punish the best?
In case there's a fee, it should go to the TERS.
What is the fee and how do you justify that?
There should not be fee for having I'm already paying fees by having it empty and an extra fee because I pay with the purchase.
Ordinance, can we, I guess, here's my next question to repealing an ordinance. Could we in the ordinance recommend that the practice that was adopted, which is incentivizing a nonprofit to execute the goal of this, which is a vacancy, can that be done? I think that may be one of those fine lines where now we're.
I do want to make a brief comment on that partnership and contract that we entered with, Laredo Main Street. It was just a study to check, pretty much understand the current state of vacant buildings in downtown.
It was a spot check. It was a one and done.
It wasn't necessarily a registration of, they didn't go and fill out our application and our survey.
We actually.
It was just a database of buildings that are empty, that are.
Yeah.
And we supported through hiring 2 interns paid by the university for this study.
So is there a motion?
So let's make a motion to, repeal this ordinance that is established.
Should it be more in the form of a recommendation?
Yeah, the recommendation to bring before council that this ordinance be repealed.
Due to the nature of the intention.
It has been accomplished through other mechanisms.
Will this be as an item,
It's a recommendation.
I would say under establishment or under,
has this first through city managers and then?
But it's
I-
just a.
Because it's a recommendation out to an advisory to economic, who goes to city, then it goes.
But the recommendation is to remove or just to remove the fees?
Well, but it's because legal is saying that.
you could do either one.
Yeah.
Like you can amend, if you want to change, if you want to leave the ordinance in place but change parts of it, then it would be an amendment. If you want to get rid of it altogether, then it would be repealing it.
I would just say to remove the fees, so we at least have the framework of how we can, in order to provide immediate relief, we can remove the fees. That's removing the teeth out of this.
Mhm.
And then at least we have something we can work with and properly amend. I know the ordinance stated that there was going to be outreach. None of that was ever done. And I think that's what a lot of frustrations behind. So if we remove the teeth out of this, then we can work on amending it so that it gets us what we need versus penalizing people.
So, I would like for you to make the motion, Julian, as to removing the fees and working with the recommendation and working with, I don't know who the organization is or the downtown or whoever.
No.
Okay, I have the-
Let's just repeal it's easier if we just move to repeal the fees, which is the objective. I mean, the main objective.
So if you make a motion, Junior, I'll second.
Okay, so my motion is to remove all fees moving forward from this city ordinance and to have the city of Laredo work with the Business Improvement District in figuring out the best policy for developing a vacancy rate update year over year.
Second,
What's the purpose number?
That's gonna be 2021, 150.
Any discussion?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion.
Motion passes by majority. Last discussion with possible action regarding EDEX meeting schedule.
Mr. Chairman, we're about to finalize the meeting schedule for this year, so we just wanted to put it briefly on the table and make sure that, you know, if there are any recommendations as to the change dates.
I know this was a moved meeting, like this wasn't the official meeting, official date, right? What's
Yes.
usually been the official date?
It's usually the second Thursday of every month.
I would like to change it to Wednesdays if possible.
Or Tuesdays?
Tuesday,
Wednesday would be on Tuesdays.
Tuesday is better for you. Tuesday works for me.
The second Tuesday of the month?
Or Wednesday or something, yeah.
Yeah, second Tuesday of the month is fine.
Everybody okay with that?
I'm
Second
okay with
Tuesday.
that.
Yeah, and of course, you know, if we need to move it, you know, for a holiday or something, but yeah. Valentine's.
Everybody's okay.
At 12
Can we finish at
12
one?
minutes?
Then yes.
You know,
Yeah.
it's gonna be 1 hour, that's it,
That-
regardless of the time you start.
That was a recommendation. That's actually on the minutes from last year.
So next meeting should be,
11th.
yeah, the
The second one.
in 2 weeks.
It's the 11th, and then it's February 11th, March 11th, April 5th, April 8th.
If it's on Tuesday, next meeting will be on the February 11th.
February.
Sixth, fifth.
I'm sorry?
How are you going to DC the fifth and the sixth?
The first week.
Thursday, the 7th.
Okay.
February the 11th.
Yeah.
At 12 noon here, same place, same channel.
But if you want the schedule, send
Back
that.
on Tuesday.
And then Mr. Mendoza mentioned if there's any other conflicts that arise throughout the year, you know.
This is February.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Like.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.